Hello, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving, of course. I hope everybody had a turkey and you like it too, as I do. And that's something very delicious. And we didn't have it in China in the past. And hopefully you started to enjoy it. You are in this part of the hemisphere, it's different. All right. Okay. Today I'm going to talk about why it's so hard to learn to speak English, to communicate orally with other native speakers, with whoever around you, for anybody from China. Especially you are above 20 years of age, coming to this part of the country, try to learn something, to settle down, you will probably, more often than not, find that the oral English, the oral communication with people, the speaking, simply put, very hard to do that. If you can work it out and let people say, well, you don't have much accent, they don't ask you to repeat, to explain yourself that much. I'll say you are basically okay with oral English. Otherwise, you probably need to work on it. Of course, a lot of other, let's say, people from China, they teach and in universities in their specific field, like programmers, which I did for many years, and they just used very simple English or only talk about his own field without much wider topics and subjects to talk about, so you probably don't need much vocabulary-wise or other knowledge to deal with. But here I'm talking in general. I'm saying the goal of uh, reaching your English communication skills to the fulfillment, uh, fledge to the top, you have to sort of can talk like your Chinese, like your mother tongue. You can use almost at ease whatever language you have, whatever subject you want to talk about. If it's you can do it in Chinese, I hope you can do it in English as well. That is a goal. Okay. Without that goal, you probably say, well, I can say hello. I can say a few friendly words. I can say, I can do basically daily chores like shopping, laundry, and things like that. But you cannot talk more than that. You cannot deal with like your native tongue, Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, most probably, and things like that to talk about anything. Give you any subject thrown at you, and you can talk about. Let's say something about Beijing, or say something about uh, any other experience like accounting or traveling or politics or culture, whatever. And if you have that capability of using English, you can talk anything you like. That's called to use it. All right. In this Chinese group, I met some people who can pretty much read very good English, and the pronunciation, the intonation, uh, the rhythm, everything, and they sound pretty good. But they never showed that they can use the English in their daily lives. By that I mean they cannot think in English. All right, they cannot think, they cannot talk as they're thinking, and you have to form words with that skillful frequency and, of course, vocabulary. And you can do that. Otherwise, you are still reading something, you prepared it. It's like still you are a pupil, a student at school, right? You cannot use it in daily life. I don't believe that's the case with your native tongue. All right. So, as a teacher, I always tell my students try to read well at first or as a first step, but later on, you have to use it. You have to think in English and you have to use it in your daily life, in all the subjects, whatever you can talk in your native tongue and use it English to reach the same degree of flexibility, the easiness, the skillfulness, everything. All right, that's a purpose. And to some extent, if you learn new knowledge with the language, with the English language, you can even beat your mother tongue. So English become your mother tongue. All right. So this concept of a mother tongue actually is not correct. I'll say treat it as first language or second language. The first language is Chinese. Other people surrounding you put to you. You are sort of a passive receiver of the Chinese. When you were born, when you were raised up, when you were at school, when you became a teenager, when you joined the workforce. Basically, you carried on with that language and use it all the time. But later, when you had the chance to learn English, all right, and most people I know learned it for many years, starting from the elementary school all the way up to college at least, so more than 16 years, but they still cannot talk in English. They can only read it or write it. You can do grammar drills. That's most obvious thing. But do pass exams. But other than that, it's very hard for them to communicate. As a result, quite a number of students coming to the United States to study got failed. I got acquittal from the university or colleges because they couldn't communicate with the professors, couldn't talk in the group, study group with other students, efficiently to communicate, to finish their academic requirements. So they were let to go. I know quite a lot of students, and a few thousand actually fell in that category, you know. So here's the point. And you learn English, learn language as a general rule is to use it. The first use is to talk, to communicate orally. But in China, because of the education system, everybody tried to learn to pass exams using it as a break, just knocking the door and throw it away. So that's not the right way to do it. We have to see it that way. And so in future, when you learn it, you really learn to use it, not to learn to just as a sort of a skill. You can forget it later on. It's no, and think about that. Let's say if you come over to the West and you start to learn new skills like a computer like me, or learn other things like accounting or finance or sports, whatever, you learned it in English. So in other words, as far as this field is concerned, you're much better expressing it in English than in Chinese. I'm sure. And if you want me to talk about computer knowledge or philosophy, I'm much more at ease with English than in Chinese to touch those two subjects, because I learned most of them in the West. And I know most familiar with the terminologies of those two fields in English. I really cannot say in that detail in Chinese, you know. So if I teach a Chinese student or if I coach them, I have to say in English. So that's the thing. So this concept of mother tongue is the wrong way to put it. You can say the first language or second language. I think that's a better way. So if you learn more English, your second language will become the first. And your Chinese will be secondary. You see my point here? So which one is the mother tongue? You don't have the concept of mother tongue anymore, right? So you have to realize what is the situation. The language system in your mind do not stay stable, do not have an eternal fixed position in your biological system, in your brain, in other words. They can change, and they will change. I think most of the people in the West, let's say the senior overseas Chinese, if they don't use that language much, you forget. You don't know how to read letters home, right? And I think a lot of people have that experience when they try to think something, they forgot a word. Well, what should I say that in Chinese? They do that. So that is the indication that the concept of mother tongue is not correct. Language is a thing. If you don't use it, you forget it. The more you use it, the more familiar you are with it. So this rule applies to the same second language, which is English. Or for some other people, maybe it's French or German or Italian or Spanish or Portuguese, whatever have you. But the case is that if you don't use it, or don't practice it, or don't do it, use it that lot, you really start to forget it. And that is the case. All right, so what I'm saying is, I want you to notice is, especially you are out of the China after 20 years of age or 30 years of age. You want to still be able to communicate orally in English with the native people here. You have to learn to buy my book. I'll show you a new way, rather than depending on the environment, on foreigners, on other people talking to you, to learn how to improve your speaking capabilities. You follow my way. I think that is faster. The fact is that the Chinese, the old or classical education system is not very good, right? They waste a lot of time and they teach you dumb and deaf English, and everybody knows that. So we sort of should forsake it, all right? We should let it go and don't just follow the old track, wasting a lot of time along the way. So that is probably what you should do. And do yourself a favor, try something new. If it doesn't work, try something else. Don't stick to the old and proven useless way of learning. That is my point. So hopefully you will enjoy my book, and if you have any question, you are always welcome to ask, and I'll show you the right way. Hopefully you will achieve this goal of communication freely with native people, like what I do, and I work daily with many different people because I'm a translator and work with blacks and whites and all sorts of people from all over the country, like talking to 40 or 50 people a day about various subjects: hospital, train station, food stamps, the court battle, the insurance, everything, almost everything, I think. So that is quite some experience for me because I have the chance to know how or if it's good enough to communicate. What's the standard? How can you pass their judgment? They let you do the job and let you communicate without flaw and communicate with them smoothly. See, that's the very point. I came out from China, and when I was already 30, let me see, 36. The first day I landed in the United States, got out of the airplane and got home by other students and who met me in airport. I started to argue with the landlord to negotiate the price, the rent, I mean. So when you come to this part of country, you really have little time to study English itself. You have to use it all the time. Of course, here, since I'm talking about here, what I meant is you don't depend on other things outside of yourself to improve your English. And like I did when I was in China, I got the English ready. When I got out, I can just rightly use it right away without wasting any time. But on the other hand, if you feel that your English, your oral English, does not reach that level of fluency or skillful enough to communicate effectively, efficiently with native people, you still have the chance to learn it. But just get rid of the concept. You have to depend on outside people, the environment to push you to learn. That's a wrong thing to do. All right, and philosophically, you can say the inner reason is a force, moving force normally. Other things outside elements are just helping you. So mostly you have to have the motivation to do things by yourself. That is important. That is the major, the origination or the basic spark in yourself trying to practice your English, try to learn to reach the good level of oral communication skills. All right, you have to remember that and don't give up. Don't lose your confidence. And I believe a lot of us are younger and than when I was from outside of China. So that is my point. You don't have the chance if you are, let's say, a teenager or even younger. You got a girlfriend, and of course you probably can depend other people to learn. Mostly that is to imitate other people, like a baby, And all the babies learn the foreign languages by observing other people. But I also noticed this: baby does not imitate that a lot. I know some 3 years old boy or girl who can speak very well in their native tongue. It's the same way to learn any language. Learn English, learn Mandarin are the same. So there's a lot of creativity involved. That is my point. So observation is only very limited part of this, playing a much lesser role than most people think. And when I was in China, a lot of people tell me, even nowadays when I teach the Chinese students on the QQ platform, they will always say, well, we don't have the environment to learn English that well. because we don't have foreigners, we don't have the chance to use it. We don't have a lot of newspapers broadcasting or TV or stories to read, to listen, to watch. Well, that's true to some extent, but that's not everything. And you have your own part to play in this. Actually, this is a major part. When I was at your age, like 20, I was in the 20s, in the early 20s at that time, I remember the only English is from Russia. They are saying something in Russian English about the politics. Occasionally, I can hear the central TV station of China saying something about Tiananmen Mall, but that's it. We were not allowed to listen to any foreign languages, foreign broadcasting, because it's considered treason at that time. So environmental-wise, you guys nowadays have a better, much better environment to learn. But what I'm saying is that is not the major thing. Okay, hopefully you got my point. Thank you. Bye bye.